The motor yacht began to swing at its anchor as the water leaving the bay clawed at the vessel to follow it. High Roller had a single white anchor light. Light trickled from the ship's ports on the main deck. Shade covers were stretched over the chrome window frames. "I'll move further inshore. We can get around the side," he whispered to Elaina. "Okay, I'll grab the binoculars I saw below deck." Her face was pinched and tense in the reflected light. They were now directly in line with the stern of the motor yacht and could make out the side of the vessel facing shore in the gloom. A 6-metre tender boat was tied off between two davits at the stern of the vessel. To maintain silence, Ric turned off Little Lady's engine, and they drifted. Ric took over the binoculars and counted 2 people on the stern. "Looks like they're wearing blazers. I don't think they're crew. Someone else, a third person, is leaning over the rail, not sure what they're up to." That was a worry. Hopefully nobody had noticed them spying. He stayed low as he handed the binoculars back to Elaina. "That's definitely 3 people," Elaina whispered back. "Look, there's another coming out from the saloon. That's number 4. It might be a woman, but I think it's a man with long hair and a ponytail." Elaina refocused the binoculars. A chill rippled through her as she watched. "Oh, God. The first 2 are dragging that third person towards the rear of the boat. That's strange." "Stay down," Ric said, and Elaina dropped lower, huddling next to her shipmate. Their heads, covered with the ball caps, were barely visible over the cabin. With a gust of wind, the little lady had swung around. They could see the stern of the High Roller more clearly, but it meant they were probably more visible themselves and more exposed. The 2 men were now lifting a bulky form over the rail on the stern towards the 6-metre powerboat tied along the transom. They could hear raised voices on the deck, but not what they were saying. The 2 men hoisted the shape, and it tumbled into the water, barely missing the tender. The splash of the weight was distinct. "Okay, it doesn't look like they're performing any kind of life-saving mission." The 4th person, with the ponytail, who had stood on the main deck watching, now turned and was retreating from the stern towards the saloon. The person pointed a torch in their direction and then shouted loudly. Elaina shrank back, opening her eyes wide. Her voice was anxious. "It's a woman! They've seen us!" The 2 men on the stern looked over at the little lady. Then they scrambled fast down the stern ladder. "Ric, we have to get out of here!" Elaina cried out in alarm. Both men on the High Roller tried to untie the lines of the powerboat tethered to the davits. They got into the powerboat, but without a lot of coordination. Ric took his cue from their actions. This certainly wasn't an effort to rescue whoever or whatever had gone into the water. They were coming out after the little lady. No time to lose. He sprang to the wheel and turned the key, hard. "Come on, start, turn on," and the little lady complied. "Hold on tight. We've got to move quickly," Ric said. He shoved the throttle forwards. The engine at first growled, then the supercharger kicked in with a high-pitched whine. The boat leapt through the water like a greyhound out the gate. They were off and running. The tender had finally disengaged from the stern of the motor yacht and rushed out to pursue them. One of the men was at the wheel, while the other was yelling and pointing in their direction. Ric focused on finding a clear escape and was single-minded in getting out of there. Elaina could see that Ric was all absorbed and there was nothing she could do. Elaina held on as Ken's boat picked up speed. She was stressed, her hands were sweating and her stomach churning. She silently urged the little lady to go even faster. "Please, little lady, faster." "We'll head towards Sydney," Ric shouted to Elaina. He steered the boat on a starboard track and pulled out perpendicular to a ferry heading out, passing it at about 16 knots. Ric revved up the little lady's engine. She was now whizzing at over 20 knots. He wasn't interested in a confrontation with the people in the powerboat. Someone could get hurt.